Type of dude that will always be ageless. I'm the type of dude that will always feel shameless. I'm the type of dude that they say is fucking heinous. Cause I'm the type of dude that you know is fucking dangerous.
Hello everyone and welcome to Nerd Talk, where we find out what makes you nerdy, and today we're talking to Mike Darling. Say hello.
Hey Jonathan, how's it going?
Alright. When I was doing some asking around on Facebook and everything. This gentleman started a friend group and I became a part of it, and he was like one of the first ones to say, hey, I'll hit you up, and I was like, thanks man. So thank you for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. I think there's a little bit of nerd in all of us, so I'm excited about what you're doing here.
I appreciate it. Like, I don't know if you have like your own podcast. It sounded like you did when I was talking to you the first time. The only reason I called it this is because I'm a big nerd. Like, I like cartoons, comics, and all that stuff. And I feel like anybody who's involved in like video and stuff like us, we're very typically big nerds and everything.
Oh yeah, so I'm nerdy in a lot of different ways. I got to be honest. You know, I'm a film guy. I actually make videos for a living. That's kind of my main thing, and so I'm super nerdy about like gear and movies and YouTube channels and all sorts of stuff there. I'm a science nerd. I just drink it up. I do have a podcast. Thanks for mentioning that. It's called Man Area. It's just me and my buddy Kalen just talking about kind of whatever's stroking our minds that week. And of course, I'm a YouTuber as well. I've got a YouTube channel called The Apocalypse Post, where I totally nerd out about anything post-apocalypse.
And to that, we should state right now that we both live in the Nashville, Tennessee area, which I think is kind of cool that we're in the vicinity of each other, and that's pretty awesome. And I was going to ask you about that because when you talked about your post-apocalyptic show, I thought you meant you were like one of those people who like prepare for like the end days when you first mentioned it. When you said when you said your YouTube channel, I thought, is he some doomsday prepper? But then I checked it out and I was like, no, he just talks about.
Yeah, man, prepping is like a whole different thing, and you've got to be pretty convinced that some really dark days are coming to start, stocking up 6 months of canned goods. When COVID first hit, mm-hmm. I saw that stores were selling out of a lot of stuff, and I got to admit, I went and filled a shopping cart with soups and canned vegetables and stuff. Yeah. But that's about as far as I've ever taken it. I'm not a weapons collector. I have a generator, but that's for camping. I know that if the power ever goes out, I can hook that up and keep my fridge going for a couple days. But how long is 5 gallons of gas really gonna last?
Especially nowadays. But yeah,
exactly.
But I brought that up because, like I said, that's what I thought it was when you mentioned it to me, and I was like, oh, he's one of those channels, so I check it out, and then it turns out to be like you're talking about like the genre of post-apocalyptic. Is that like your favorite genre of film, or is it like close to it?
Well, it's funny, I've got a lot of favorites, but I think that's one that just hits me the right way. I was an early fan of Mad Max. It was wild. I was maybe 7 or 8 when a friend of my parents introduced me to The Road Warrior, mm-hmm. And from then on, I was hooked, man. Like, I'm a huge Waterworld fan. I actually just did a video essay on my YouTube channel all about Waterworld and the extended Ulysses cut, and I don't know, I love the genre. I love like the lone hero that's just called to be a savior. Like, that is a trope that's been done over and over and over again, where someone's on their own, they're surviving, and they get called to humanize themselves once more and help people that they don't know. I don't know. I think it's a really cool genre, and to be honest, like, the art of the post-apocalypse I think is really cool because you have like a bunch of different fashions that have happened by decade. You can look back at the 50s, the 30s, any decade has its fashion, but post-apocalypse takes all those fashions and kind of sees what would happen if that was the last fashion that ever happened. So like when you look at Fallout, the video game, mm-hmm. That takes place during the 50s. Like the 50s is when the apocalypse happened, because that was the atomic age. When we were coming out of World War II, we had just figured out atomic energy with bombs. Everyone was thinking about this atomic future, and Fallout took that image, that feeling, and took it 100 years, 200 years into the post-apocalypse, where you still have all this atomic energy, but you also kind of have these old songs that would have been popular in the 50s, 40s, 30s, along with some of the like costumes, not costume styles, but some of the fashion styles, and so I think that's really cool. The idea of an apocalypse kind of like locking in an artistic style because, there's less people to create, right?
Yeah, and the one thing that really got me interested in your channel, and especially talking with you today, was you were talking about the Waterworld video that you did, and that was a really well done video. For anybody who's curious, I suggest if you go to look for his videos, watch that one first, because it is very well researched and very well documented, and I will give you proper kudos for that. Like, I didn't even know about the Ulysses cut until you mentioned it and everything, but
yeah, it's funny. The Ulysses cut actually popped up, back before Netflix when we're all pirating things. It showed up in like Pirate Bay, and I was like, "What is this Ulysses cut?" And then I saw that there's some deleted scenes in there. They did an extended cut for TV, the first television release. They actually did they put in a bunch of deleted scenes to make people watch it, because that's what you do. But then the Ulysses cut is not only those scenes, but also with some extra deleted scenes. And because it was the TV cut that was extended, they did a bunch of redubs and censorship, and so the Ulysses cut takes away all that censorship. So you have the extended cut, uncensored, with extra scenes. That's the Ulysses cut, and I think it's the definitive version of Waterworld.
Now, I always try to support the official release when I can. Do you know anywhere that you can buy the official release of that version?
Yes. So what's really cool is, the first version was a pirated version. It was just a bunch of fans online that got together. I think it was less than half a dozen people worked on it. But just in early 2019, they actually released a brand new DVD set that includes a kind of remastered version of the Ulysses cut. So you can actually get it legally now.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, like I said, I'm always about supporting the official stuff. Even if it's not available, it's not available. But I'm always supporting, hey, let's get this out in video so people can see it as much as possible.
Yeah, and I'm surprised it took them so long.
Me too. But I put in your comment section because I figured it'd be like a fun video for you to talk about, but I don't know if you've ever watched it, but it was called Fist of the North Star. Have you ever watched any of it?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Okay, it's a post-apocalyptic anime, but it takes place in the 80s and everything, of course. But the thing that I loved about the anime was that everybody was wearing these big-ass shoulder pads. It was very much inspired by the Road Warrior and everything, but it's so funny to me watching it because it was obviously inspired by the Road Warrior, but it took so much liberties from everything else. It was honestly ahead of its time and a part of its time at the same time. It was so weird watching it.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, a lot of stuff was stealing from the Road Warrior. It was kind of a sleeper hit. Not a sleeper hit. It just came out of nowhere, the genre hadn't really been explored yet. And then when Road Warrior came out, such a success, especially in the United States, a lot of people were trying to, claim a little bit of that new market. And so you saw a lot of stuff come out that was Road Warrior-esque. And what's really cool is they can all kind of fit in that same world, when you're talking about post-apocalypse, a global apocalypse is very unlikely. That would be a hard thing to do. You're talking about massive world war or asteroids hitting. It would take a lot to destroy equally across the planet. But what I find really interesting is that a lot of our modern day apocalypses are very localized. When you look at flooding from a surge, where that flooding happens, that becomes an apocalyptic landscape. You look at New Orleans after the levees broke, or you look at some of these island cultures where they just get completely wiped out, or even the fires up in California. And so those places become these apocalyptic landscapes, and they're all different. And the only reason they don't go full apocalypse is because we actually have the rest of the world that come in and help. Yeah. But as far as the people that are affected, that is world changing.
The one thing that I know specifically about the history of the one that I just mentioned is that since it was made in Australia, the Road Warrior, when it migrated across seas and everything, it went first to Japan because that's the closest country to it, and that became super popular over there due to, of course, it being an ease of access. But then as soon as that got to Japan, everybody else in the world was like, hey, what's this Road Warrior thing? And they're like, here you go, you can have a copy. And it just spread like wildfire, and that's basically they got it first, and they're like, let's use this. But another
totally,
it's such a weird genre because I never thought about it in that particular way because, like I said, but the entire, like you said, the aesthetic and all that stuff is really cool. And you got into film. Did you get into film because of this genre, or because I noticed that in your Facebook profile when it mentioned your school, I didn't know if you went to school for film or did you go to school for something else?
Yeah, so I did not go to school for film, although I did have a buddy who did. So I did did a couple of short films with him, but that was still really kind of early on in the whole digital camera realm. So the quality you could get with cameras back in the early 2000s just wasn't there yet. But anyway, I went to school for theater and fine arts. I was a fine arts major. I spent most of my time in the theater, which was pretty wild. And so those two things I think have lended to my filmmaking quite a bit. But yeah, so I was never actually formally trained in film production until I got to LA. So I got to LA as an actor, artist, musician. I was trying to explore what creatively can I do. And that's when, this was like circa 2007, 2008 when I first got to LA. And web series were first starting to be a thing because the cameras came out that could actually film, something half decent. I got together with a couple of friends and basically developed a script for a web series called Alpha Planet, which was my first real foray into like script writing and shooting. And I was trying to write it for myself as an actor, give myself a vehicle that I could, show my chops and build a reel, that kind of thing. Yeah. Except I couldn't find anyone that would dedicate the time to shoot it because it's a lot of work, So I ended up giving away my role and I bought a used Sony FX1. It was a digital tape camera, and I basically taught myself how to shoot and taught myself how to edit. We had a cheap microphone on the end of a painter's pole because that was the budget that we had. But I got a really great group of friends that are super talented actors to come out, and we made this web series. I think it was about 40 minutes total in 10 episodes, so they're pretty short, like a web series should be. But it was post-apocalyptic. The story was about a group of space travelers coming back to Earth to see if it was habitable again. And what they found was the story they'd been told on their Ark Life ship that was out space looking for a new planet to live on. The story wasn't the whole truth. They thought that Earth had been abandoned, but when they got there, they actually find a tribe of people that are still alive. And so there's a whole bunch of conspiracy stuff that it starts leading into, but we never quite finished the story. So maybe someday I'll be able to get back to that.
Sounds cool. Since you did this in LA, did you do this out in the desert part of?
Gotcha. Yeah. So I was shooting that when I was in LA. And what's really cool about LA is if you drive a half hour, you can find yourself in the middle of the desert. And because it's just big open space, you can find a lot of places that you can kind of sneak into that no one will care that you're there. And we shot most of Alpha Planet in an abandoned oil finery. It was kind of a popular location to just go and urban explore because there were a few buildings left behind, some oil tanks, a whole lot of ruins. And so we were able to shoot a good majority of it there. And then when I shot the first 3 episodes, I want to say, we had actually had a forest fire that came through about a month before. And so those first 3 episodes, when my explorers land and they're first like seeing Earth, it's all charred. It's all this like fire hellscape that they're first exploring. So it really lended well to the post-apocalypse that I was going for.
And I bet that just the visuals alone of that probably look really cool. Like I haven't seen it, but just you describing it, I'm just imagining like a spaceship and then guys step outside and it's desert, but you see nothing but like the black and char of where the fire was. It probably lends itself well to like a
that's exactly what it was.
Creepy idea of what happened here.
Yeah, it was.
Go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah, it was perfect. I mean, you couldn't ask for better production design than just finding it out.
It's funny that when I hear stories like that, like I don't know if you've ever heard this story or not, but like the first Iron Man movie, when they were shooting in the desert area and everything, they were like, hey, the sandstorm's coming in, we gotta go, and the guy's like, well, why don't we just shoot the scene like we were trying to out here in the sandstorm? And they're like, okay. So they went out there, and when they pulled up the Iron Man mask, that's when a sandstorm was going on, and they just filmed there in a sandstorm.
Oh yeah, on our very first day, we actually got hit with a dust storm, and it was pretty wild because in the desert, when there's no foliage and you're talking sand and the fire had come through, it's just all this ash and really small particles of sand just whipping through the air. So for about 90 minutes or so, we could barely see, and we just wrote it right into the script because there's just a few of us out there. We could just kind of improvise as we went, and the ship is supposed to in the very first episode, the ship actually takes off. It has an emergency and it repositions itself, but the explorers are unaware of it, and that kind of sets up the whole like we're gonna walk for the rest of this web series thing, and it actually played in really nicely because I could say that this storm that they're going through is actually what spooked the ship and had it kind of autopilot itself somewhere else.
Now, this is getting into like other things, but do you like reading books about this type of stuff, or music, or like what is your hobby besides like the movie and the film stuff? Do you like reading? Do you like playing video games or something like that?
Yeah, definitely. So unfortunately, I have not done as much reading as I should, so I can't talk about a whole lot of like books. But there is some really cool apocalypse themed music out there. One of my favorite bands that does this is a band called Attack. It's actually spelled a little funny, AHTCK, Attack, and they actually just dropped a whole new album. They do like post-apoca rock, and so they're constantly talking about like Mad Max themes, Fallout, all sorts of end of the world stuff. And so if you get a chance, check them out, Attack, and I think you'll like what you find. And then as far as, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I've never heard of that genre of music. So is it like a lot of like heavy instrumentals, or how does it usually sound?
Yeah, so like hard rock and heavy metal kind of lends itself to some darker themes, and of course the apocalypse can fit into that sometimes. A lot of bands, like Radioactive by Imagine Dragons, they kind of played into it just a little bit, but they don't go full bore. Like they are not an apoca rock band. They just happen to sing about the apocalypse every now and then. But there are bands that that's kind of their main theme. They're kind of going for that like nerdier hard rock fandom that kind of latch on to a single theme rather than kind of singing about everything. So there are actually several bands out there that do it, and it's kind of funny because I've been going to this event called Wasteland Weekend, which is the world's largest Mad Max festival, and they actually open it up to a lot of other post-apocalypse stuff too. But they exclusively host live band acts that do apocalypse-themed music. So you actually go to this weekend. It's a festival. It's an arts festival. There's cars. There's costumes. There's themed camps, and of course, everyone who plays live music on site, they're playing apocalypse-themed stuff. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, especially because I know before we talked, you said you were going back to that before the holidays and everything. So how was that experience this time around?
Gotcha. Yeah. So unfortunately, 2020 basically canceled every event.
Okay.
All festivals were pretty much on lockdown, so that didn't happen. There are a few scheduled for this year. I think that right now it's kind of a best intentions kind of thing. Like they're gonna schedule it and plan like it's gonna happen, and just wait to find out what the local laws and what the best course will be as the events approach. So Wasteland Weekend has not set dates yet, but a few other festivals have. So I'm kind of excited to throw those on my calendar and hope to get to them. There's actually a couple pretty close to here. There's Atomic Falls that happens over in Oklahoma. There's Junkyard happens at but Nukelanta, that's obviously north of Atlanta. There's another one called Apocalypse East that happens up in Pennsylvania, and of course there's Detonation, which is the second largest festival that I know of in the United States, and that happens in Arizona. So I'm actually planning on hitting up as many of these as health-wise possible this year, just because I love them and I want to support them. Yeah, so hopefully they happen.
Good luck on your journeys getting to those. They all sound like a lot of fun and everything.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is Wasteland Weekend, which is the big one.
Yeah.
There are about 5,000 people at the last event, but some of these other ones are still small and localized. They can be down to a couple hundred people, or in the case of like Detonation, I think it's about 1,000 or 2,000 tops that shows up. So they can be a little bit more intimate, a little bit more raw compared to Wasteland, where they've kind of had to kind of normalize into a more typical mainstream festival. I don't even want to say that because it's definitely not mainstream, but they have to follow a lot more rules because of the size and the amount of time that they've been around.
How did you find out about these style of events? Because I'm sure they don't show up as set like certain websites or something. Like, how did you find out about them? Because I was curious about that.
Oh yeah, totally. So mostly these communities are based on they've got their own web pages. They're really hard to find because they're manned by a couple people. But there's Facebook pages for all of us, and they all kind of share on a few different post-apocalypse group sites like Wastelander Central. That's a Wasteland Weekend based chat room, but all the other events kind of also promote through that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Facebook I think is probably the best place to find things. And then my buddy actually hosts this web page called postapocevents.com. I want to say, I'll have to double check that. But he finds out when everything's happening and compiles all the information. And I try to too. Sometimes it takes actually reaching out to the festivals individually. Like I'm actually emailing the people putting them up to find out the dates and where people can find information, because it can be a little bit tough, especially on some of the newer events.
Because even though stuff I'm into, they try to like document their stuff as best as possible, but sometimes I'm just like, when's it happening? This weekend? Gotcha, I can't be there.
Yeah. a couple years ago, I found myself wondering, like, who's got all this information put together, and I couldn't find it. So that's where I started, like, really reaching out to people, and I ended up putting together a map of the United States that kind of looks apocalypse themed and has all the current events. And that was in 2018. I want to say I put that together, but it's about time to get that updated. So I'll probably be doing that because there are a couple of new events. There's a lot more events worldwide, so I think the next map will be a world map. And I'll be able to kind of compile all the different events because there's a lot now.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. There's an event in Poland that's been going for quite a while called Junktown, and it is huge, and the art over there is great. And there's another event in Spain. There's one in Japan. Like it's nuts just how far this thing has reached.
That surprises me when you said something in Poland. I'm like, they have a fandom for that over there? I guess so. That's wild.
Yeah, and I may have got that wrong. I think that's Old Town. One or the other. There's Junktown, there's Old Town. These things are everywhere, and it's pretty wild. It's tough to keep up with.
Now, what do you mostly go for to these festivals? Do you mostly go just to hang out and get connections, or like, what do you usually go there for when you're there?
Yeah, there's definitely a few reasons. One, like, because I have an apocalypse YouTube channel, I love going and getting new footage. Most of the channel is actually like documentary style, where I'm just showing off what people are doing, interviewing people, putting that kind of stuff together. So I definitely go just to, stay up on what stories there are to tell. But on a more personal note, like, I love the art and I love the passion that people put into it. And when it really comes down to it, it is the people, because these wastelanders, these people that you get to know out there, even though you only see them once or twice a year, they're some of the best people I know.
That's cool, because you were talking about the art, and I figured it might have been that, but I was just curious. Like, I saw, like, I think it was like one of the first videos I checked out on your channel when you sent me the link. It was somebody making a Mad Max vehicle. Is that correct, or am I wrong? The guy with like.
Oh yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's Atomic Annie, and yeah, Mr. Mr. Blankenbaker. He sent in that video of him kind of giving the tour of that vehicle, and it is incredible. The amount of detail and the amount of work that he put into this thing. Yeah, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like this industrial truck with a car in the middle, like a pickup truck style camper on the back. This thing is like pure survival, and I think it's got seating for like 6 people. So when you're talking about like Mad Max vehicles, there are the aggressive ones, and there are the survivalist ones, and there's some made for speed, there's some made for defense. This one's definitely made for survivability. Like, if you had a family and you were tearing it up through the post-apocalypse landscape, this is the one you want, because thanks to that camper, it's got, a kitchen in it and a bathroom in it and a refrigerator. So, as far as having to survive on your own, you're good there. But then I don't think there's any landscape this thing couldn't crawl over, because it's got these giant industrial tires and this massive chassis of a truck and a huge engine. Like, oh my God. He said he got like 4 miles to the gallon before he put a diesel in it.
That's insanity, because I remember seeing that thing and I was just like, good Lord, is that thing even street legal? Jesus, it was insanity.
Yeah, and actually I just got sent a video from another buddy of mine who took a Honda Accord, and he put it on a Suburban chassis or a Blazer chassis or something like that. So basically he took this Honda Accord body and put it on a 4x4 V8, and it's his daily driver. But it's pretty cool because he's been working at it slowly over the course of 4 or 5 years. And at first it was just the Honda, and they painted it, he replaced the hood. I can't wait to put this video out, because he really shows off, like, how much effort it takes and how long it takes to put one of these together. Yeah, I'm always in awe by these vehicles, because I'm not much of a car guy. Like, I like working on my own cars, but as far as like chopping your body in half and just adding pieces here and there and retrofitting, this body on this chassis with this transmission, it's nuts how much these guys can pull off.
Well, I'm not much of a car guy myself either, but one of my sides of my family, they're not none like this, but they're like to rod a car. They like to take pieces and parts and everything. And I remember my uncle saying that he put like the engine of a Mustang into the body of Mom van, and I was just like, okay, so I didn't know.
A Mom van?
Yeah. And I didn't know nothing about that, but I told my friend this, who's very big into cars, and he just looked at me with dead eyes, like, how fast did that thing go? I go, I don't know, but the back's still missing because how fast it was going
Oh
forwards.
my goodness! Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
One of the standout vehicles that showed up to Wasteland was actually an airplane body that was put up on a monster truck chassis. So that was pretty cool.
How was that even possible? Like, I'm just hearing that. I'm just like, what?
I know it. Yeah, it was just the fuselage of an airplane, and so he just attached it to the chassis of a bigger truck. He put all the controls up in the captain's quarters.
I have to ask, can this thing
yeah,
fly?
No, it can't fly. It can't fly. I guess if you get enough speed in a big ramp, it could fly for a few seconds. But,
oh god, hearing it.
Yeah, that actually shows up in one of my Wasteland videos, so you can find it there.
Oh god, I'm surprised I missed that one. Good lord. That's insanity.
Yep.
Have you tried to show up?
And that's just beginning. Like, what's that?
I was just gonna say, did you show up with one of these vehicles, or you have any inkling to do that?
Man, I'm still waiting for the day. Like, I'm totally utilitarian when it comes to this. When I go to these events, like, because I'm shooting video, I have to bring a camper because I need all my gear to stay clean. Which I did a couple years where I was in like a military style tent, and my gear would come out so dusty. I couldn't believe that it still worked. And so, for the last few years, I've been working out of a camper, which makes it a lot easier. And then, I just have like my daily driver that pulls it. So it's a little bit difficult to bring a lot of things to the event because, I'm trying to do it in one trip.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a vehicle's in my future somewhere, but it's not anytime soon.
Because I know what you mean about being professional, but I'm just imagining you being like, one day I'm going to rock in the biggest vehicle possible and just shut up everybody. Just go crazy with it.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not much of a, like, I can't do the body swaps. Like, I can change oil, I can do spark plugs, and that's kind of, the limit. So I might have to just buy one that someone's already worked on and is looking to sell so they can start their next project. That might be my key. But yeah, I'm looking forward to having a vehicle because when you're at these events, like, it is really tough to walk around a whole lot, especially in the desert events because, the ground is kind of unforgiving. There's rocks everywhere. You're wearing these big boots just to protect your feet. And it can be pretty grueling because that event is, I want to say, quarter mile or half mile long. So I'm literally walking miles every day, toting a camera around to get all that footage.
I want to ask about this, since you're walking around in the desert and everything. Is there like a special tripod that you bought for this, or you just handy cam it most of the time throughout the event?
You're asking if I'm a part of a tribe?
No, I said, did you bring in like a specially made tripod to like sit on the sand floor or anything like that? To, like,
Gotcha. No. As far as that goes, yeah, my tripod works fine, kind of wherever. It's got the little spikes on the bottom that stick out if the sand's a little too deep. Yeah, I try not to bring my best gear. So I have like, my backup camera, a slightly cheaper tripod. Yeah, the nice gear, I tend to not bring along. Just because it's so dusty and like, I got to kind of think of things as expendable. Although I have a project coming up that I need to have it look really great. So it'll probably be my A-list gear.
Well, I'm just asking about that because the tripod I have, it's not the best one ever, but I always call it its little shoes because it has like the little cushions at the end of it and everything to keep it steady. And I always imagine like being on a soft surface like sand, it would be like sinking constantly and everything. It'd be just like
yeah, that's like something you gotta look out for. Is if I'm doing a long shot, you gotta keep an eye on how much weight I'm putting on that tripod because it will kind of sink to the sand over time. But for the most part, I'm working handheld and moving around pretty quick, so I haven't had that problem yet.
Do you shoot with a Canon, or what kind of camera do you use to shoot most of your stuff with?
I'll shoot with anything, and depending on the project, I do. When I'm working on for certain clients, they'll have certain cameras they want to shoot with. I personally own a line of Sonys, so I have a A7S II, a FS7, and an FS700, which is kind of an older camera. I want to say it's over 10 years old now, but it still does an amazing job for these kind of ENG shoots. I've actually shot most of the Wasteland stuff on that camera in the last few years.
Hey, if it works, it works. Because I have a Panasonic,
Yep.
That's why I've been shooting with all my stuff with, pretty much.
Gotcha, cool. Yeah, I used to shoot a lot of Canon. I still have some Canon lenses because they're just beautiful. But yeah, I made the switch to Sony, and I've been very happy with it. But I mean, now it's like you can shoot with almost anything. They're all giving great color, great pictures. They've all got great bit rate. You know, like you cannot go wrong with today's equipment.
It's like it's scary to me. Like my teacher brought it up a lot when I was still in school and everything, but it just made me eyes roll because I know it's true. Was even your phone can take great video now, and I'm like, thanks for bringing up that I shouldn't have spent thousands of dollars on my camera.
Yeah, it's so true. Yep, and you know, for the longest time, you know, people would say like, you know, are you on Instagram or you know, they reference like your camera phone. I'd be like, no, I'm a real photographer. I'm a real videographer. But now it's like, you know, my brother's got like a Pixel phone and it just takes gorgeous pictures. Throw them right up on Instagram. Like you're good to go. No need to bring in extra equipment when it's not necessary, right?
Like one of my friends at my day job, she has one of those fancy phones that now has like the 3 lenses. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it's that.
I sure do.
Yeah, and she took a picture. She was like doing her selfie and took a picture, and she goes, "Oh, that doesn't look so good." And I'm just looking at that picture, going, "I could frame that right now, and it would probably sell probably fast just because of how high quality it is."
Yep, so true. Yeah, and the thing with like, you know, pictures versus video, like it's a lot easier to process a photograph than it is a video, and so that's why they've been able to do like, you know, background blurring on iPhones for the camera, but not for video. Like that's a lot more processing power to do that in real time. But now we're starting to see those kind of effects trickle over into video. You're still never, like, you know, CGI does not age well. It still doesn't age well. But real effects do, and I think it's the same thing. If you're actually getting your bokeh in camera, it's always going to look better than a processed bokeh that happens, you know, in your phone. I don't know how close we are to that like difference diminishing, but it's not there yet.
Well, you're just talking about that. I take it you're a very practical guy just by saying that, because I agree with you in a lot of cases, because for whatever reason when I'm watching an older movie, if something's like legitimately jumping like in front of the camera or something, I'm like, that looks 10 times better than something being added in with CGI.
Yeah, totally. And you know, George Miller, who's the director of Mad Max, is a big proponent of keeping things special effects, not visual effects. He likes to get everything in camera as much as possible and then just juice it up with CGI. He'll use it for backgrounds, he'll use it for like extra fire, he'll change colors in post, but as far as like capturing the action and especially the actors, like that is all real. I don't know if he's ever done a CGI character. And when you look at like Legolas in The Lord of the Rings, there were a couple times where he was full CGI and he was doing absolutely impossible things that no human could ever do, which I understand, it's a fantasy story, so he should be a little fantastical. But then when you compare the real recorded Legolas to the CGI one, it's night and day. And so it really sticks out, especially, you know, now that it's been over a decade since those movies came out. It really sticks out as, you know, this is CGI. Kind of, it ruins a lot of that character, because even if they had used like a stuntman or just straight up like had him do the best he could and kept the actions more realistic, it would stand up better today.
Well, for me, the way you describe it is the way I try to make it more like recognizable for people who don't know what I'm talking about when I say like film terms, is weight. Like I'm like, when it's like the prequels Yoda. Like anytime I'm watching that thing bounce around the camera, I do not feel like there's any weight behind Yoda. But when he's his little puppet self in the original trilogy, you can feel the weight behind that thing. You can see that he's hunching. You can see that.
Yeah, totally. And I think there was some meme that went around actually talking about Star Wars and how with the Mandalorian, they used a puppet Yoda. We have the technology to make a CGI Yoda look pretty darn good at this point, but they still stuck with the puppet. And the reason for that is in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, a awesome puppet will still look like an awesome puppet, but the CGI will have been dated.
And that's the saddest existence for modern films, because they're like, hey, let's use all this CGI. And I'm like, hey, do you want your films to look dated in like 5 years?
Right. Yeah, it's so true.
Like, I don't know how much was like in the computer, but what was it? The Avengers Infinity War and everything, when Thanos is doing his big moment and everything. Like, he looks real enough to me, but I'm just like, how much of that was like in the computer and how much of that was an actor on set talking to Tony Stark or talking to like the character he's supposed to be talking to? Because
gotcha, right, because when you see the behind the scenes of an Avengers movie, it looks like like it's pretty much all shot on green screen. I don't know if they how many real locations they use for that movie, but it's not a lot.
It's sad to exist, but I get it. Like I said, as a video person, I get it. You're like, we're maintaining risk, we're uptaking profit, but you're also sacrificing quality. You're sacrificing, in my opinion, a long-lasting image in a lot of respects.
Oh yeah, totally. But yeah, I don't know if you can tell a superhero movie without using some element of visual effects. Like that'd be pretty tough to do. And so, when you're talking about like an Avengers movie, they get a pass. Shoot as much green screen as you want because the movie's candy. It's just it's dessert. It's not meat and potatoes storytelling. It's just big action to attract the widest audience. And I mean, at this point, we're talking worldwide. So, China has become one of the world's biggest movie consumers. And so we're making movies here for the United States for 380 million people or whatever it happens to be. But China's got over 1 billion. And they love movies over there. They consume American movies. And so we actually have to, I don't want to say dumb down, but you have to make the movie available for people that don't speak English.
Well,
and so we end up with simpler movies with a lot more thematics to help you follow along with the story.
Well, working the practical effects back to like Mad Max and Road Warrior and all that. I don't know if you've ever caught this one, but it was like on a random cable station I had. It was like called El Rey, but they were interviewing the director behind Mad Max, and they asked him about like some of the stuff that was going on in the film, and that, like, I think one of them was for Fury Road, and they said, why were there guys up on poles like swinging back and forth? Was that supposed to be like an intimidation thing? Like, what led you to that image? And he said, I went to the circus and I saw that man up on the trapeze, and I thought, that looks terrifying, I will use that.
Yeah, and what's pretty wild, he was absolutely 100% dedicated to making sure that he could shoot that real. Like, that was another thing. He really fought to not have it CGI, because obviously having people up on these poles doing circus moves while moving cars through the desert is not the safest thing to do. But there's actually people that specialize in these like circus acts, and so he was able to use like circus performers and a really great stunt team in order to do those movements for real, which, again, like, props to him because it looks real because it is real.
I just remember that in my head still to this day. Just, I saw circus, I wanted circus, and I'm just thinking about watching that movie and just imagining like the clowns, like clown makeup on these vehicles.
Oh yeah, I couldn't imagine if you went any more circus with it.
Yeah, it was just so weird.
Well, you know what tied it into reality is the way that they were called polecats, the guys that were on top of the poles. The way that the polecats used those poles as like attack vehicles, almost like medieval trebuchets, like and because when you go back into post-apocalypse times, you're almost like going back in time to, there's been the westerns and even back to medieval, where you're talking about siege weaponry, right? Because you have to be able to get over walls, and in this case, like cross from one vehicle to another, so they could actually attack a vehicle without leaving their own vehicle, which was pretty rad. Like, it's really inventive.
Well, just the way he designs the world is so unusual. Like, I know this guy had like a purpose, but every time I watch him, I can't remember what his character name is, but you know who I'm talking about, the guitar guy that's on, like, has his big bass setup and everything. He's just playing his flaming guitar. And I know, like, his, back in the ancient war times, to, like, help rally the troops, they would play, like, war songs, be like, yeah, we're gonna get him, we're gonna get him, we're gonna get him. And that's basically what he's playing, basically like a war song anthem for his troops. And just that idea carrying over into, like, a rock aesthetic, I just felt like it was such a unique idea, but it fits so much with, like, the idea of what Mad Max is and everything.
Yeah, so that character's called the Doof Warrior, and it was exactly that. Like, he's the drummer boy. He's the one that amps up the army, because first off, when you're trying to control an army and you don't have modern technology, kind of under the same command, and so that was one way to unify the troops, let them know what was happening. They didn't really play with that too much. Like in Waterworld, when they're attacking the atoll, they actually have flag guys, like, you know, using the kind of flags that an Air Force would use in order to signal to airplanes before radio communication, that kind of thing. So yeah, you're exactly right. Like, that's the drummer boy. That's the guy that's amping up the army and getting them ready for battle.
Just taking that aesthetics from everything, like you said. It's just basically, this is where time ends, but where time collectively just folds in on itself. Like, let's take stuff from this time period. Let's take time from this period. Let's throw this in here. Let's throw this in here.
Totally.
And it basically, cars, for a lot of instances, I feel like they're supposed to be like the replacement for the horse, bug, and chariots for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's a good point. And don't forget that, you know, when you were talking about like the Mad Max series, he's got plenty of gasoline in Mad Max 1, right? But then by the time the Road Warrior comes around, he's going to be very particular about how much gas he's using, and even goes so far as to collect gas in like a pan from a crashed car, because it's that precious. And then by the time you get to Thunderdome, the third Mad Max movie, there is no gas. He's literally using horses to pull his car like a carriage. Which is just nuts.
Bringing up Thunderdome, I know a lot of people have like their own particular view on this, but what is your opinion on Thunderdome? I know a lot of people who like Mad Max feel like Thunderdome is like the lesser of the films, but I don't know. I think it's okay.
No, I think it's great. You know, it's an 80s movie, and so it had a lot of 80s elements in it. I mean, that's inevitable. And, you know, a lot of people will critique Tina Turner. I think she did a hell of a job with that character. It was exactly what it needed. And other than the like credits music, like, I think the movie's perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't know, like, the apocalypse is supposed to be, you know, almost fantastical, but that's exactly what it was. It was a whole new take, because, you know, after the Road Warrior, where we have this tribe that's trying to survive, years later, theoretically, now we have, you know, a different tribe that has become a city, and they have their own new form of government. They have their own form of order. They have their own economy. And I mean, if you were a tribe and you grew this town to survivability, you would want to protect it. And so you would have these, you know, elite guards to make sure that nobody was going to threaten this new thing you've built. So I think it's actually really organic, the way that, you know, Thunderdome was built.
Now, this is going to step into like a very niche subject, but what is stuff in the post-apocalyptic genre that you cannot stand? Like, what is something about like the genre that you personally don't like about it? Like, if someone makes a movie and then you're like, cool, and then they say what's in it, you're like, not that, no.
It's kind of funny, because one of the tropes is the lone survivor, and they'll start with 20 minutes of just them surviving on their own. I think that it can work really well, but it can also become a little cliche.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love seeing like new ideas, new landscapes. You know, the desert landscape shows up a lot, and it can be done well. You know, there are always going to be new movies that do this exact same thing and do it really well. But yeah, I think if you're going to do a remix of one of these stories, you better have some new material to work with.
Like, what can you give a good example of what you would like to see in the future with it?
Oh shoot, I don't know. That's really hard to say, because I don't have any specific examples, unfortunately. But, you know, like, Netflix pumps out post-apocalypse movies, and most of them are pretty bad. I think they try to do like one a month, which is probably about right. You know, a lot of cases, one of the reasons you do post-apocalypse movies is because the budget can be low, because all of your set dressing is garbage and your costumes are just old clothes. Like, you don't have to be really inventive with it.
Yeah.
You just have to deteriorate everything, right?
Yeah.
And so it can be a very affordable genre to work in, but along with that comes, you know, maybe some filmmakers that are trying to do things for the first time. I don't know. I think it's always going to be script first.
Yeah.
You have to have a good story, and if you don't have a good story, don't make that film.
Like, I remember, like, this back in my high school days, so I can't remember exactly. Like, I don't have a script. I wrote like an idea outline, and for whatever reason, my brain was just like, this is the coolest idea ever. It took place in like a post-apocalyptic times and everything, but the way I said it was that everything that happened in the world, like every news outlet would shut down, and there was like only one news outlet left, and he was the worst DJ ever. Totally spewed out profanity. No one understood the news, and the records he played was god awful. But that was the whole movie. That was the music of the movie. That was how the story got spread and how the main characters knew where to go. And I thought that was the funniest idea I had for like a story, and I called it. Sorry, and
no, good. I was just saying that's a fun idea.
And to make it really cool, I thought, hey, I'll make it about zombies. And the buddy, he's like a war vet and everything, like the main character's a war vet, and his buddy's like a zombie now who is also was a war vet and everything. But everything that's like zombie wise, he's like leading the charge and everything, like the zombie war vet.
Yeah, awesome.
But that's the idea I had as a high schooler, and someone's like, well, you should write it. I was like, yeah, but whenever I'm writing that cheesy nonsense, I'm just sitting there going, my head hurts just reading that.
Yeah, sometimes when you're, I do the same thing. I'll start writing a story and I'm like, oh no, this is just the movie that I watched last week.
And I don't want that. And I agree with you. Like, the whole thing about movies that I love personally is the story and the characters. That just brings me in. I'm like, if you get all that together, you've got...
Yeah, there's a brand new Netflix movie that I'm actually excited to watch. I haven't watched it yet. I don't even know if it's out yet. But it's called Army of the Dead. It's a Zack Snyder movie. And what they did was they combined the zombie genre with the heist movie. So, I mean, we're talking like Ocean's 11, but with zombies. And I think these mashups like that can be really cool because they can actually, change things up and have original ideas. I'm really excited to see it, and I want to say it's got some half-decent reviews, although, again, I don't know if it's even out yet.
What's the name of it?
It's called Army of the Dead.
Is there anything else about, not just aesthetically or, like, the lone warrior, I guess, aspect of it, but is there anything else in the genre that really captivates you personally?
Yeah, I like seeing different landscapes. I just watched George Clooney's new post-apocalypse movie. He acted in it and directed. I think it's called Midnight Sky. Is that right? Hold on, I'm gonna double check this. I want to get it right. Yeah, The Midnight Sky. So it actually takes place in the Arctic Circle after the entire Earth has been evacuated. They're all kind of like my story, the Alpha Planet. But yeah, so everyone left Earth. They're looking for a new place to go. They're actually all heading to, I think, one of Saturn's moons, I want to say. And he stays behind because there's an exploratory ship heading back that lost its communications, and he wants to make sure they don't come back to Earth. No spoilers yet. I'm not going to give spoilers. We'll just say that. But anyway, it was really cool because this is an apocalypse where you're not really seeing a post-apocalypse happen. Mostly you just learn about some weird thing that's happening via computer screens. So we don't really know what's happening on Earth, but it was really neat to kind of play this out in a frozen hell landscape than a typical desert or even woods kind of scene.
Oh, yeah, I bet just seeing the change from, like, what is it, like brownish reds of the desert to, like, the cold, icy blues of, like, the Arctic Circle probably look pretty cool.
Yeah, totally.
Now, I don't know if this one counts, but this one I always thought was neat how they should have ended it, like in the book, but I Am Legend, do you consider that post-apocalyptic?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think I Am Legend is a great story. And it's cool because when they change the movie from the book, when they give you a different ending, that kind of thing, it makes it a little bit more watchable and it gives you more stuff to go find. Because if it ended like the book, a lot of the book readers would have been like, oh, okay, I already knew that, But changing things up, I think, always helps. But yeah, that's a hell of a post-apocalypse movie, and baddies in that one. Even though we kind of think of them as zombies today, they were vampires when the book was written. And so it kind of not only gives us a great look at a post-apocalypse movie, but it also kind of goes into a creature movie with creatures that are kind of the blend between these vampires and zombies.
Because the one thing I remember from the movie, and I was terrified watching that as a little kid. I always thought that was neat that when Will Smith's character, like his dog got hurt and everything, there was like a zombie dog off in the distance, and it was like the night shadow was like creeping out, but it just showed the dog like pace back and forth between the shadow. Like, that's such a weird image, but I just remember that, just like, that's so terrifying that something's like trying to get you, but it's slowly like creeping up on you with the darkness.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, and that's a good movie because they bring in a lot of those horror elements. There's a little bit of comedy. There's that like typical post-apocalypse like survivalist stuff. He's got a very inventive house that he can put on full lockdown. He's got like the radio broadcast going where he's trying to find other survivors. It's kind of one of the perfect post-apocalypse movies.
Like, my teacher always says it, but it makes me think of it when I'm like remembering that movie especially. But don't kick the puppies. Don't kick the puppies. And then there's the dog, and you're like, they kicked the puppy because the dog gets hurt. And
what's that mean? Like,
she's like, don't go for like the long.
Explain that a little bit more. What's don't kick the puppies?
My teacher always explained it like, don't go for the low-hanging fruit or whatever. Don't try to like get the most easiest sympathy you can, like doing something to harm a child or harm an animal or something like that. She always referred to it as like, don't kick the puppies.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
That's always stuck in my head, just because of how random it was. Just don't kick the puppies. Do you have any like weird stories on set? I'm sure you've done like a lot. You talked about like filming in the sandstorm and anything. Was there anything like fun that happened on set that was accidental for one of your films?
Oh man, it's been quite a while since we shot that one. I can't quite remember. You know, there's always a ton of fun that happens on set, especially when you're shooting like indie stuff, and when you're shooting with your friends. It's a really good time. I don't know, like we used to laugh a lot. you just have a good time, and when you're working with professionals, it makes it that much easier too. Like all the people that were in Alpha Planet, they were absolute 100% professional. They knew their lines, they improvised, they worked with me as a beginning director, and yeah, I can't remember any awesome stories, but we just had such a good time making that.
What is the best advice you ever gotten when you were starting out? Like, what is some of the best advice you got?
I think the best advice that anyone could ever give a filmmaker is go create. You're never going to get better by not doing. You know, like film school can help some people. Being on set can help other people. But the most important thing is just to practice. You know, I kind of heard this piece of advice, and I've given it several times, which is your 10th script is going to be amazing, so write the first 9 and don't worry about how good they are. You're just going to get better the more scripts you write. You're going to get better the more films you film. And so, you know, make a bad movie, even though it's kind of doomed to fail, but make a bad movie and go ahead and let it fail, because by the time you're done with that movie, you're going to really know how to make the next one. Whether you're script writing, making the movie, editing, it doesn't matter. Just the more practice you have, the better you're going to get.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add today before we head out?
I don't think so. I think that's about it. Yeah, I mean, I'd love if anyone that has a love of the post-apocalypse genre would check out my YouTube. It's just youtube.com/theapocalypsepost. I'm also on Instagram, same at the Apocalypse Post. Yeah, you can kind of follow along there, and you'll learn about festivals. I talk about movies, video games, a little bit of everything.
Okay, I'll leave a link to his channel down below for anybody who wants to check him out, because he's an awesome dude. He posts some awesome stuff, and he really puts his heart and soul into everything. And I appreciate him coming on today.
Thanks so much, John.
You have a good day, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, everyone. And
Thanks, you too.
And if you like the video, please share it. Please like it, comment, do whatever YouTube people tell you to do. All right, have a nice day, everyone. Bye.